Imagine, an emperor, once the master of Europe, a man who commanded armies, crowned kings, and shifted the borders of nations, now finds himself isolated on a tiny island in the Mediterranean. Yes, the same man who nearly conquered Russia. If you ever thought destiny was set in stone, then the tale of Napoleon Bonaparte will make you think twice. Buckle up, history enthusiasts, because you're about to venture on the ultimate roller coaster ride from invincibility to vulnerability, from palaces to exile, in the life of one of history's most enigmatic figures. The year is 1813. Europe is more than just a melting pot of political intrigue, it's a veritable cauldron set ablaze by the ceaseless fires of war. These are wildfires, consuming the grand edifice of Napoleon's dreams, the empire he built on blood, sweat, and artillery. Welcome to the high-stakes drama of the War of the Sixth Coalition. This isn't just another episode in the Napoleonic Wars, this is the Grand Coalition, the Avengers Assemble moment for the enemies of Napoleon. This is a who's who of European powers, a coalition that would make even the most audacious emperor pause. And trust me, Napoleon was audacious. First, you've got Russia, the juggernaut that had just given Napoleon a Siberian winter's worth of no thank you in the disastrous Russian campaign. Tsar Alexander I is out for vengeance, and he's not coming alone. Next up, Prussia, the land of iron discipline and steel resolve, steaming after years of French domination. King Frederick William III had had enough of being Europe's doormat. Austria, often wishy-washy and ever the opportunistic player in this European Game of Thrones, also joins in. Emperor Francis I, who, let's not forget, is Napoleon's father-in-law, decided that family dinners weren't awkward enough and declared war. We've also got Sweden in the mix, led by none other than one of Napoleon's former marshals, Jean-Baptiste Bernadotte. That's right, even his former comrades are now turning against him. Then there's the United Kingdom, providing the financial fuel to keep this coalition engine running, while intermittently landing punches with their naval prowess. Spain and Portugal are in the fray as well, their lands being a bloody battleground where British and Spanish forces have been giving the French a run for their money. And let's not forget the smaller German states, some of which viewed Napoleon as an oppressor they were all too happy to rise against. This coalition wasn't just an alliance, it was a symphony of vengeance, each nation an instrument in an orchestra playing the dirge of Napoleon's empire. They were united in purpose, bound by the singular goal of clipping the wings of the French eagle that had soared too high, too fast, too recklessly. The vultures were circling, and they had set their eyes on a prey that was growing increasingly vulnerable. So tighten your seat belts, because if you thought Napoleon's Russian winter was a gut-wrenching thriller, you haven't seen anything yet. The battles of Lützen and Bautzen are the encounters that spring hope eternal in the darkest moments. In May 1813, the air was thick with tension, musket smoke, and unyielding resolve. Our fallen emperor, Napoleon, is not one to let destiny dictate terms. Fighting with the ferocity of a cornered lion defending its last inch of territory, he lunges forward. At Lützen, against a Prussian and Russian force, the man shows flashes of his military genius. The battle is ferocious, deadly, and above all, utter chaos. But when the cannons finally fall silent, it's Napoleon who holds the field. Now, most emperors would sit back, sip some wine, and revel in victory. But not Napoleon. He's aware this isn't checkmate, it's merely a check. He moves on to Bautzen, where yet again, he beats the Russians and Prussians. However, these victories are Pyrrhic triumphs, hollow, like echoes that fail to reach their destination. The coalition armies are bruised but not broken. They tactically retreat, licking their wounds but keeping their fangs bared. They regroup, strategize, and adapt. The Allies, you see, have become savvy students of the school of Napoleonic warfare. They've learned to sidestep his signature moves, to deflect his haymakers, and to exploit the chinks in his armor. Napoleon, stretched thin and running on fumes, can't muster the decisive knockout blow that had once been his trademark. Victory eludes him, it's close but perpetually out of reach, like a mirage in a scorching desert. And in October 1813 came the Battle of Leipzig, or as it's often called, the Battle of the Nations. This isn't just a battle, it's an apocalyptic showdown, a clash of titans, a veritable European WrestleMania. The scale is gargantuan, more than 500,000 men, over 1,000 cannons, and multiple nations, all thrown into a blender of mayhem, courage, and desperation. We're talking Russians, Prussians, Austrians, Swedes, the whole coalition roster pitted against what's left of Napoleon's Grand Armée. The ground trembles, the skies darken with the smoke of artillery, and cries in multiple languages fill the air. When the battlefield smoke finally clears, a chilling reality sets in: the god of war has forsaken Napoleon. His once majestic Grand Armée is shattered, a hollow shell of its former glory. Thousands lay dead or wounded, and the coalition forces were practically dancing on the ruins of Napoleon's ambitions. This defeat wasn't just a military setback, it was a seismic shift that reverberated across Europe. From then on, it wasn't just a slope Napoleon was on, it was a cliff, and he was tumbling down, down, down. As the coalition forces swaggered into France, a swagger earned from hard-fought victories and bolstered by sheer numbers, Napoleon didn't prepare a white flag, he sharpened his sword. What he orchestrated wasn't just a military campaign, it was a magnum opus of defense, a testament to his enduring genius. Imagine an orchestra, with Napoleon as the conductor, standing not on a podium, but on a shifting landscape of hills, forests, and rivers. Each maneuver of his diminished yet determined army was a note, each cavalry charge a crescendo, each stand a haunting melody of defiance. This was his military symphony, and he composed it with the urgency of a man racing against time. But even the most brilliant symphonies fall flat without an audience to appreciate them. And France, exhausted by years of constant warfare, was a weary audience that could hardly keep its eyes open. The men who once cheered Vive l'Empereur were now whispering prayers for peace, any peace. Allies? What allies? Those fickle feathers had long since flown the coop, leaving France isolated on the world stage, like a tragic heroine in a Shakespearean play. To make matters worse, the unthinkable happens: Paris, the jewel of France, Napoleon's own heart and soul, falls to the enemy. Yes, you heard it right, the City of Lights was dimmed, captured not by a marauding army from another continent, but by neighbors who had grown tired of its arrogance. The echoes of enemy boots on the cobblestone streets of Paris were the harshest music Napoleon had ever heard, a dissonant chord that signaled the finale of his military opus. At this moment, he must have realized that his symphony, no matter how brilliant, had failed to move its most important critics, the fates that govern the rise and fall of empires. The Ides of April in 1814, a month usually celebrated for the rebirth of nature, but for Napoleon, it was the end of his imperial cycle. He abdicates the throne in Fontainebleau, eyes likely heavy with both pride and regret. The emperor's cloak is lifted off his shoulders, and suddenly, he's no longer a ruler of millions. He's just a man with a past much larger than his present and a future shrouded in uncertainty. You might imagine a dejected Napoleon, a shadow slinking away in disgrace. But this is where the script flips, and even in his most humbling moment, Napoleon receives an offer that's anything but ordinary. Our dethroned emperor is offered sovereignty over Elba, a speck of an island in the Mediterranean, with just 86 square miles of rocky terrain and olive groves. It's like taking a billionaire CEO and saying, "Hey, you can now be the manager of a lemonade stand." But underestimate Napoleon at your own peril. To him, Elba wasn't just a geographical footnote, a place where he'd be out of sight and out of mind. Oh, no. For Napoleon, Elba was more than a prison, it was a stage for what could be described as the most fascinating second act in history. Imagine this, an island transformed into a micro-empire. Stripped of his grand palaces and vast territories, Napoleon nonetheless insists on maintaining the rituals and pageantry of sovereignty. He has his own little army, dressed to the nines, marching to the beat of their exiled emperor. There's a court, too, a miniature version of the opulence he once knew, with chamberlains, aide-de-camp, and even a tiny government that manages the island's affairs. He busies himself with reforms, improvements, and grand plans. Yes, even in defeat, the man's imagination knew no bounds. And let's not forget, the audacity of hope. If you thought Napoleon was going to wallow in despair, think again. He's planning, scheming, always with that glint in his eye that suggests he's solving a complex riddle only he can see. He wasn't defeated, he was recalibrating. Napoleon was the embodiment of that age-old adage, legends never die, they just regroup, refocus, and wait for the curtains to rise again. He may have been confined to Elba, but in his mind, he was always in motion, always striving for the next chapter in a life that refused to be ordinary. So, what's the takeaway from this whirlwind journey from imperial splendor to isolated exile? It's that fortunes can change, my friends. 1 minute you're on top of the world, and the next you're confined to a rock in the sea. But also, that within every defeat is the seed of resurgence. That's the magic and mystery of Napoleon Bonaparte, a life that was anything but ordinary. If you enjoyed this roller coaster of history, emotion, and drama, then smash that like button, and if you haven't subscribed yet, hit that subscribe button for more electrifying journeys through the tapestry of our shared past. Until next time, keep the wheels of time turning.